The other day, I was scrolling on YouTube and I laughed out loud when I saw this video title. Dungeons and Dragons cancellation scandal goes nuclear. Nuclear in all caps. Now before I tell you what that video was about, I'm Bob. This is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and this video is one of those important discussions we occasionally have on the direction of D&D YouTube, or should I say RPG YouTube, our precious little corner of the internet. It can often be so tumultuous with both hype and hate, and that is our topic today. So I'm not going to distract you from the topic with so many graphics and sound effects, and I appreciate you for sticking around anyway. So, Dungeons and Dragons cancellation scandal goes nuclear. I want to be very clear. This is a hate the game, not the player situation, because the creator who penned this title is only giving people what they want to see. With 92,000 views, there is an undeniably large audience for this genre of Dungeons and Dragons videos, punching up at the fumbles of a world-renowned brand name. There is just something satisfying about watching a giant trip over its own 2 feet. I get it. Speaking of tripping over my own 2 feet, my path here is kind of flooded. I don't know if you can see that. But after watching several of these recent scandal videos myself, I noticed something innocent, something fun. The creator and a good chunk of the viewers are clearly in on the joke. They know D&D isn't canceled. They know it's not a scandal, and for God's sakes, you've waited long enough. That video, Dungeons and Dragons cancellation scandal goes nuclear, was about how the new miniature line for Baldur's Gate 3 characters had bad paint jobs. That's the nuclear emergency. Top comment: if I wanted poorly painted miniatures, I can do bad all by myself. It's hyperbole all the way down. But the fascinating part of this hyperbole and of this joke is that up until quite recently, they were not joking. Top comment on a video from the same channel only 3 months ago: the real scandal is why people keep buying WotC trash. And another video, same channel, same time period: the best thing that could possibly happen to D&D is that it becomes completely unprofitable and Hasbro sells it to someone who loves it and will support it for the love of the game. And I do kind of agree with the last part anyway. But you see what I mean? Until very recently, this negative skewed, sensational content, the death of D&D scandal just got worse, etc., used to be presented and often taken at face value, because it used to be that lots of people, upwards of 90,000 people apparently, either believed or desperately wanted to believe that Dungeons and Dragons is canceled. It is over. Doom and hellfire on Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro for their many transgressions. Whoa, and obligatory nature break for the first live animal up close that isn't a bug. We have a pretty little frog here just hiding in the grass from us, I suppose. And, fun fact, don't touch a frog or any amphibian in the wild, because chances are your human hands are carrying oils or soap or bug spray or suntan lotion or something that can go right into their bloodstream if you touch them. So don't do that. And okay, I just noticed, although it might be hard for you to see, this little pond is actually full of tadpoles. Very cool. But we'll get out of this area now. Picking up where we left off, there really were many transgressions by Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro worth being frustrated or even being angry about, and worth wanting some kind of justice for, because to watch that giant fall after so many missteps, whew, that would feel satisfying. So that shift from frustration and anger to comedy is really what we're here to examine. The trajectory of online attitudes around D&D through a recap of how they initially turned so negative, and mostly on the indicators that we have already crested that wave of negativity and I think are now settling into a more mellow time for Dungeons and Dragons internet discussion, a time of much less hate and much less hype. But first, how about some hype for a cool RPG that is succeeding in a niche where D&D has not yet managed to quite succeed? Today's sponsor, Tales of Fablecraft, a digital-first tabletop role-playing game that currently functions on PC, Mac, iPad, and iPhone for players, with iPhone for GMs and Android devices coming soon, but cross-play on everything. So you do not need a massive gaming computer or console, and if you play the demo like I did on your phone, you don't even need a group. The game teaches you while you play. But in general, Fablecraft's goal is making it easier for humans to connect through a fun RPG, whether they're playing remote or in the same room. That's where the digital aspect comes in, providing clear and gorgeous visuals and quickly resolving the math so you can focus on the scene and your fellow players. However, they also get creative with game mechanics. No pen and paper RPG can change the values on the faces of your dice based on how you build and advance your character. Yeah, that is innovative, and you better believe we'll be talking more about the importance of innovation here. But for now, check out Tales of Fablecraft. It is free to download and get started through the link below. And there's a little train for you. Now zooming way out, and I hope you can still see me. All too often on this wonderful platform, YouTube, you'll see video titles about the downfall of blank, where the presenter spends 20 or more minutes of your time explaining how so-and-so really fell off. And sheesh, based on the length of my script, I apologize for doing the inverse of this, but yeah, this has a happy ending. It's a positive story. Stick around. But whether that's a celebrity or a trend or a game, you know the story of that alleged downfall every time. So-and-so had an incredible surge of popularity thanks to some combination of innovative ideas, skillfully executing those ideas, and luck. But eventually, the novelty wore off, and that growth incline turned into a plateau, or even a steady or sharp decline, depending on what you're using to measure that popularity. And this too is the story of Dungeons and Dragons that has unfolded on and offline over the last 11 years. So what started the good times, the times of pure positivity and pure imagination? It was when D&D designers like Mike Mearls, Jeremy Crawford, Chris Perkins, and others set out to write the 5th edition of this game by combining the best aspects of older editions while streamlining and modernizing the mechanics and their presentation and rigorously playtesting through the D&D Next program, all to make Dungeons and Dragons easier for new and veteran players to enjoy. They had a strong foundation, but they also innovated, they skillfully executed, and they got really freaking lucky about 1 year later when Stranger Things Season 1 exploded around the world. That show practically single-handedly reminded tens of millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions, that Dungeons and Dragons exists and is fun to play. But D&D's luck continued, as in the same year, talented and charismatic ambassadors for the game like Matt Mercer, Matt Colville, and others provided hundreds of hours of free entertaining and educational videos on how to play and how to run Dungeons and Dragons. Now, there's always been some debate as to what had the biggest impact on D&D's growth in this glorious half-decade. Was it the 5e rules? Was it Stranger Things? Was it Critical Role? And I think the obvious answer is all of the above, but it would not have truly exploded without Stranger Things. I have a couple older videos where I literally track D&D's popularity via Google searches, pinning the upticks to seasons of Stranger Things. It is that clear, my friends. But of course, what were people finding when they Googled D&D around that time? Critical Role. And what version of D&D was advertised all over Critical Role? 5th edition. The only confusing part of this 5-year explosion is how wildly it was misinterpreted by the suits at Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, because in 2020, when everyone got stuck inside for a year or two, sales of D&D books, boxes, and memberships on D&D Beyond all exploded through the roof, so all they saw was big money, awooga, cartoon style, swimming in the gold coins. Completely blind to the fact that 2020 had actually marked the beginning of D&D's first popularity plateau in the last 5 years, mostly due to the delay in the production of Stranger Things Season 4. And how can I say that with such confidence? Because, like clockwork, when Stranger Things Season 4 came out, that 2-year-long popularity plateau turned right back into a cliff, and D&D was suddenly cool again. Unfortunately, by this time, the D&D brand had already been steered to follow that 2020 money, so they invested in all the wrong things, and this is how the D&D scandal era began and how it just got worse for a while. Start producing more books each year. And they did, but quality suffered. I broke down those rushed releases in a recent video, but from mid-2021 on, every D&D book got less praise and more criticism. Start creating a new edition so we can force D&D Beyond to sell. And buying the website was a good idea, but doing it forcibly, such that all the founders left, has left it in a sorry state, according to many users, and it's still so hard to search for anything. Start working on our own virtual tabletop. Also a cool idea that D&D staff had for years, but it was really not needed then in a post-lockdown world. Plus, the CEO's claims of under-monetization around this time, yeah, that really helped kickstart the negative D&D news sensationalism. And get rid of that pesky open game license, allowing all those leeches to make money off our game. Horrible idea, and we'll get to that in a second. But what Hasbro and WotC should have done was just throw all the 2020 money at Netflix to produce more D&D adjacent shows or movies where people were already enjoying them, and heck, throw some money at Critical Role to keep them close instead of cutting them off with the OGL controversy. And this is where I will briefly address a concern probably already voiced in the comments. Sure, some of my OGL videos and some of my recent ones could be hastily misjudged by their titles as falling under the D&D scandal clickbait genre, but at least at the time of making this video, no, I disagree. And when it comes to the OGL, I believe that I and many others reacted appropriately negatively to that controversy. I still prefer to call it a controversy rather than the OGL debacle or fiasco as many others do, because I think those more comical terms weaken the memory of what was at stake there. If you need a reminder, it was thousands of independent small businesses who had propped up D&D for over 20 years, and many of whom produce the coolest D&D compatible books and tools on the market. However, don't ignore my emphasis on the past tense. That was all at stake. If you need another reminder, it's been over 2.5 years now, guys, and almost as long since the license controversy was on paper resolved. So hold on, I'm getting there. For most of these past 2 years, it seemed like every single month, either D&D or Wizards or Hasbro or a certain AI-loving CEO would do or say something ridiculous that offended one chunk of the D&D community or another. It was these continual incidents that had been feeding the outrage mill of D&D scandal videos this whole time. So I'm totally not saying you must forgive your gracious Hasbro overlords and forget any of this happened. No. But I am totally saying that most people, as evidenced by the comments and even the creators behind some of these recent D&D scandal videos, even they have learned to let go of the frustration and the anger and just laugh about it. Nuclear in all caps because some minis were painted badly. And I think this shift in perspective was the final domino for shifting online attitudes about D&D away from the outrage mill. Now, before I tell you about the other dominoes, I just want to insert my Outrage Mill song from the Orcs video because I think it's funny. Outrage Mill, confidently incorrect, Outrage Mill. I'm mad all the time and I don't know why. Gonna blame somebody I don't like online. And the sun is like really coming out now. Kind of bad for filming, but a great metaphor for our video. And there's a nature break for a really big slug. Hand for scale? Yeah, that's a big boy. All kind of wet guys out here today. I think that is an invasive species too, where we live. Note on screen if I was able to figure it out. Okay, the second domino leading up to this shift was simply the lack of any fiery D&D scandals over the last several months back to back. The only stories even pushed as scandalous by the Outrage Mill have been, in February, orcs don't have a unique stat block in the new Monster Manual. That is inconvenient for those of us who like the brutality and the smooth brain simplicity of purely evil Tolkien-style orcs. And it was a really softball way for D&D to mediate the academic and social concerns over the presentation of orcs. But this so-called scandal did not hurt anybody. In March, the Sigil VTT didn't come close to meeting D&D's expectations. Also true, I made a video about why it flopped, but the only possibly scandalous part here is that the 30 or so employees brought on to build it were then laid off because it flopped. In April, D&D lead designers Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford both jump ship. Yeah, that is rough because they were both instrumental to the most successful edition of D&D, but scandalous? The scandal is that they were kind of forced to rewrite the game, but not really change anything, and all for reasons that did not serve the game or the players. I would want to leave too. And then in May, we got the Baldur's Gate 3 minis, not looking so good. Whatever. So what was the first domino? The butterfly wing flap that slowly began to turn the tide away from both D&D hate and D&D hype? It was how, 10 years into D&D 5e, many people just want to play a new game, and the new D&D 2024 rules update did not meet most folks' expectations. For WotC's expectations, we know from public data that it sold pretty poorly through traditional book-selling outlets, and we can guess that the full picture, including digital sales, was not stellar because the most positive spin they came up with was that it sold faster than the most popular supplementary rulebook back in 2020. That's something, but if it sold more copies with an impressive number, they would have said more instead of faster and shared that impressive number. And all this means that as D&D popularity may be leveling off such that fewer people have a yum to yuck with troll content, the trolls will now be taking their business to a different Outrage Mill. And you know, I do still see comments every once in a while saying, I stopped supporting WotC years ago and I'm never going back. And it's like, cool, man. I mean, I basically did too, but you're really acting like the stereotypical vegan of 2010 who can't help but tell everyone what they don't do. Okay. Also, don't get it twisted, I know D&D is still far and away the only household name RPG out there. It has a 50-year history, 50 plus now, and no other game can afford to be name-dropped in mainstream TV or movies. But all that said, we are left with a crucial question. As these waves of D&D hype and hate are washing away, diffusing into other topics and other RPGs, where are the puddles of popularity growing now? Remember that Google data I used to approximate D&D popularity? Well, when we check it for Pathfinder 2e, hot dang, it really shot up because of the OGL controversy, and it's still on the rise. That game offers more intricate layers of rules, mechanics to the crunch lovers of 5e, so it just makes sense that many players would want to take a step in that direction. On the other hand, many others, including myself, have stepped in the opposite direction of rules complexity, and the data for one of my new favorite RPGs, Shadowdark, shows that it is really taking flight. It's got these big jumps around the initial Kickstarter, then again for winning a ton of RPG Any awards, including beating Pathfinder Remaster for Game of the Year. friendly competition, relax, and its latest Kickstarter for an official setting book. And we certainly cannot ignore the new cool kid on the block, Critical Role's Daggerheart, with such massive spikes around its announcement and release that we can't even see its growth curve, but I'm guessing this game really has legs. I made a whole video dissecting all the things besides Critical Role's popularity that will make Daggerheart last at least as long as the new rules update for D&D. And to really bring this full circle, I think that Daggerheart is the first and only game besides Dungeons and Dragons that top D&D YouTube creators, Ginny D and Pointy Hat, have ever made a dedicated video about. Like, I know they mention other TTRPGs and videos from time to time, but I think this was their first explicit non-D&D coverage for both of them, and the views are insane. That's a great sign in itself. Another kingpin of the space, XP to level 3, has been making Pathfinder videos on and off for a while now with similar levels of success. And I have to point out that henceforth, every new creator and viewer discovering D&D and other games, they will not be carrying any of our D&D licensed grognard baggage. They will be entering a new space of pure imagination and probably a mellow positivity about TTRPGs. However, and I really should have mentioned this in my recent Daggerheart video because it could have massive implications for everything I said there and here, but anyway, Stranger Things Season 5 has just been announced to be coming out in batches of episodes around this Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. That show will be reigniting D&D mainstream popularity for another year or two, and hopefully lifting all boats with it once again. Now, check out my possibly erroneous video about how Daggerheart will outlive the current iteration of D&D, and for bonus videos, please join these wonderful Patreon supporters or YouTube channel members who make all this possible. Thank you, and keep building. I gotta cross this water again.